There's only one way to be happy. My way.
The world of Trolls is filled with sweetness, from sugar-fueled pop songs to the fun arts and crafts vibes of the environments. But sometimes, there's really nothing sweeter than a villain getting their proper comeuppance. Today, we're gonna break down the crimes of each Trolls villain, and figure out what sort of punishment they deserve. Welcome to Wicked Binge. Today, we're sentencing the villains from DreamWorks Trolls. Now, instead of going chronologically, we're gonna be starting with our least evil antagonists, and discussing their more minor crimes before making our way down to the truly heinous villains. And first up, we have the queen of rock and roll herself, Queen Barb. With her desires to have one nation under rock, Barb had set off to collect all magic strings and perform the ultimate power chord, assuring that rock would remain as the only music in the land. Although she could be a kind and caring queen towards her own rock troll subjects, Barb could be seen as an extremist in terms of hating other types of music, and to an extent, other troll cultures. Using a dangerous combo of force and brainwashing, Barb did all she could to try and erase all these other cultures and music styles on the grounds that, in her opinion, rock was the best and deserved to be the only one that existed.
I can make us all one nation of trolls under rock.
She specifically wanted revenge against the pop trolls, who she saw as the reason why the original troll tribe separated. While we can't excuse all the invading and brainwashing of other trolls into becoming rock zombies, stripping them of not only their individuality, but their will as well. Not to mention the apparent love for property damage and destruction. We will hand it to Barb that at least she doesn't have an attempted murder charge on her list of crimes. A low bar, we know, but compared to our other troll villains, it is still an accomplishment. Even so, all these efforts paint Barb as a fairly malicious leader, and while she does learn her lesson and even becomes friends with Poppy in the end, the court of Wicked Binge won't be so forgiving. In order to pay proper reparations to the other troll tribes, we sentence Barb to use her resources to repair and or pay for all the damage caused by her invasion efforts. Additionally, since her crimes are music-based, we also sentence her to musical community service, using her tribe's resources to help the other tribes put on concerts and celebrate their style of music. Next up, let's talk about the troll traitor supreme, Krieg. Betrayal is the name of the game with this guy, and while normally we couldn't necessarily blame Krieg for doing what he had to do to save himself, as being eaten is a pretty understandable fear, he crossed that line pretty clearly when he not only tricked Poppy and her friends into getting trapped, but went so far as to take Poppy's cowbell and trick King Peppy and the other trolls into thinking that she had returned, leading to them being captured as well. Yeah, this guy was going to sell out his entire community and let them get eaten just to save his own skin. He may be clever and sympathetic on the surface, but in actuality, the guy is just a selfish coward who goes past self-preservation and into being selfish and even malicious. What's more, while he claimed that he would have to live with his traitorous choice for the rest of his life, Krieg really didn't seem all that broken up about it.
I'm doing this for you.
You may be able to claim that Krieg eventually redeemed himself in the Trolls The Beat Goes On series, but that series is considered non-canonical. And even then, it's pretty hard to make up for conspiring against and ultimately selling out an entire community of innocent trolls, some of which being your friends. Looking at all these crimes, we feel that Krieg ultimately deserves 20 years in prison, with a chance of parole for good behavior. While he may not deserve death for simply trying to survive, him purposefully going against the pop troll kingdom and putting all their lives at risk in order to save his own just can't be overlooked. But at least it'll give a zen guy like him plenty of time to meditate on his pretty horrible actions. Moving right along, let's discuss the first of our Trolls band together villains, that being Veneer. For as much as Veneer apparently has a heart, being sympathetic towards Floyd and not wanting him to die, it sure didn't stop him from using Floyd's talent for his own gain. As he said, he loves his sister, and he also loved having plenty of money and fame himself, citing both reasons for why he couldn't simply let Floyd go despite all the pain and distress the poor troll was obviously in. Velvet may have been the ringleader regarding her plan, but Veneer was more than complacent in it and benefited from it just as much. If literally stealing other people's talents weren't enough, Veneer was also more than happy to partake in verbally abusing his and his sister's assistant, Crimp, often not giving her any sort of respect or grace and instead choosing to run her ragged. We should also mention that while, yes, Veneer was the one to confess to his and his sister's crimes in the end, he only did so when they were essentially already pushed into a corner. So yeah, not exactly the most noble gesture, even if it was still appreciated by Floyd. But hey, a confession is a confession, which means that we're able to cut Veneer just a teeny bit of slack. But because he's nearly an adult, the court has decided to try him as an adult. And as such, we're sentencing Veneer to 10 years in prison, with a chance to get out early for good behavior. We're also forcing Veneer to pay reparations to Floyd for all the music he sold using Floyd's talent. But while their crimes are similar, it can't be denied that Velvet is truly the more evil twin. As we said earlier, kidnapping Floyd and luring the other members of Brozone to Mount Rageous was her idea. Although they both use Floyd's talent for their own gain, Velvet is the one who is constantly pushing Floyd to his limits, only caring about her own fame and being more than willing to use every last bit of talent that Floyd has, even if it means killing him in the process. Veneer even points out that Velvet could have just walked away while she was still on top instead of tapping into a half-dead Floyd for what would have likely been a half-baked encore. But Velvet truly only cared about her own fame, and she likely would have continued sacrificing more trolls for the spotlight if she had been given the opportunity to do so. Additionally, while Veneer mostly just verbally abused their assistant, Velvet was often the one actively throwing Crimp into the closet, and even tricked her into building her talent-sucking shoulder pads. Save for our last villain today, Velvet is probably the most irredeemable villain in the Trolls series, and for her crimes, we're giving her 15 years in prison with no chance of parole, as well as reparations. We finally arrived at the original Trolls villain, Chef Bergen. Of all the crimes that we've discussed today, Chef not only has the most serious ones, but also the most numerous, ranging from kidnapping and cooking innocent trolls to treason and terrorism.
A calm troll is a tasty troll.
Becoming a power-hungry monster after failing to recapture the trolls that managed to escape Bergentown, Chef ultimately wants nothing more than to cook each and every troll out there, feeding them to the Bergens and eventually becoming her hometown's ruler as its queen. It's only because of Chef that eating trolls became so commonplace, and it's implied that she's killed and eaten dozens of them before, including Branch's grandmother. She also put Bridget in danger of being imprisoned for life after blaming her for the trolls' escape, claiming that Bridget had eaten them all. What truly makes her wicked, however, is her refusal to accept peace, even going so far as to try one last time to kill Branch and Poppy.
Come on, eat!
With countless murders to her name and an eager willingness to kill even more, there's really no reasoning with a villain like her. Not even being kicked out of Bergentown was able to stop her from pursuing revenge against both the Trolls and the Bergens. For all these reasons, we feel like Chef is the only Trolls villain that deserves the death penalty. Specifically, we're sentencing Chef to be hanged, a fairly typical punishment for both a member of a royal court who tries to usurp their king, as well as a multi-count murderer.